what you're doing right now is you're not just legitimizing Hamas's strategy, you are encouraging it.
No, I'm
because
not.
The whole...
When did I encourage it?
Okay, well, let me explain.
Elica,
and then
you know
you'll
people
understand.
are listening to this, right? I mean, they know what I've said.
But only in the framework that it's not the fault of the people who are dropping the bombs on the innocent people or shooting the people who are the ones. Hey, you know what? You just asked, you just had, excuse me, you just had your whole thing about let you finish and then you can respond to that. So why don't we do the same?
I know. And you stopped me when you were being
strawmanned. You opened by saying that Piers. You got interrupted when you said Piers was running cover for Hamas. Honestly, let me just save you all the time in this debate. You wanted to debate me because I'm so wrong about everything and I'm so influential, and you wanted to smack it down. It ain't gonna be you, lady. You're not the one who's gonna stop me. This is just ridiculous.
It's lady.
Okay, I'll call you whatever. Oh, okay, good one. Oh yeah, you really smacked down my bad ideas. Anyway, Piers, again, all they have.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of Piers Morgan Unhinged, where moral logic gets twisted and the goalposts move faster than Israeli airstrikes. And right in the middle of the ideological brawl, poor Elica La Bon, caught like a deer in a debate crossfire, except this time, the hunters are Dave Smith and Piers Morgan. You see, Dave's gonna come in swinging not with emotion, but with cold, undeniable facts, quoting Israeli officials who openly brag about starving civilians in Gaza, while Elica clung to the overused but Hamas hides behind baby script like it was a UN resolution. Piers, he's suddenly forgotten the existence of Mossad, the world's best intelligence agency, but somehow didn't see 3,000 Hamas fighters building tunnels or planning attacks right under their noses. Convenient, huh? Grab your popcorn, because this isn't just a debate. This is Dave Smith reminding the world that moral clarity doesn't come with defending war crimes in a suit.
So the point I think Dave is making, quite straightforwardly, is that what the IDF's been doing in the last 3 months, to me, crosses any line of self-defense and could absolutely be categorized as terrorizing the innocent people of Gaza. Now, it doesn't mean they're not in their heads going, they're going after Hamas. Their motivation is, we want to kill the bad guys. But they have lost all sense of proportion, and they are now behaving in a way that if other people were doing it to them, they would categorize as terrorism.
Okay, so let me just answer you in 2 points. First of all, let me ask you this question. If Hamas was entirely separated from the civilian population, let's say it was totally down north and everyone else, up north and everyone else was down south, do you think that we'd see these civilian casualties?
But no enemy in modern warfare has ever been entirely separated from civilian populations. It's for the birds. It doesn't happen. My brother and my brother-in-law were both army colonels, right? It's for the birds. This idea you get some clean war where civilians are nowhere near any of it, it doesn't really happen ever.
Yes, it does happen, because you just used the example of Iran. You saw
Give me an example when no civilians have been killed in modern warfare.
It's not no civilians, it's the amount of civilians.
Right.
And it is the fact that Hamas, it doesn't just embed itself, it embeds its
But there are as
weaponry.
many civilians in Lebanon. The fact there are more civilians in Lebanon than there are in Gaza. How was it that Mossad was able to target 3,000 members of Hezbollah with a pager device that exploded? But in Gaza, the only way to deal with it, apparently, same situation, in Lebanon, Hezbollah live amongst civilians. The only way they can apparently do it in Gaza is to obliterate Gaza and kill tens of thousands of civilians as they go after Hamas. I don't understand the difference.
Okay, let me answer the question and then you'll understand. What you're doing right now is you're not just legitimizing Hamas's strategy, you are encouraging it.
No, I'm
because
not.
the whole...
When did I encourage it?
Okay, well, let me explain.
Elica,
and then
you know people are listening to this, right? I mean, they know what I've said.
If you let me finish my sentence, and then at the end of it, you can tell me if you agree. Should we agree on that?
Sure.
Okay. When Hamas intentionally embeds itself amongst civilian populations, the whole point of that strategy is that there'll be so much civilian casualties that the world will look at Israel and say, what an abhorrent pariah state that has lost all legitimacy. Okay, so let me finish. So every time the world does that, every time the world reacts in that way, it reinforces Hamas's behavior because it tells them this works. So in this moment that you're saying this, you are encouraging Hamas to keep doing that.
So we shouldn't talk about the 50, 60, 70,000 civilians.
No, you should
however many it is. We don't actually know how many have been killed. We know we believe 70,000 have been killed, of which perhaps 25 to 30,000 are Hamas. We don't know, because no one can ever give me actual figures.
You should talk about it, and you should frame it within the context of, look how much destruction there is when terrorists embed themselves in civilian populations,
right,
which
Dave,
just goes
let me
to
get Dave
that
to
this
respond.
strategy-
Let me get Dave to respond.
I mean,
I've been
where do I
talking too
even
much.
listen? This is just we should talk about it, but only in the framework that it's not the fault of the people who are dropping the bombs on the innocent people or
It's a
shooting the
dual
people who are the ones.
responsibility.
Hey, you know what? You
It
just
is a
asked.
dual
You just had.
responsibility.
Excuse me. You just had your whole thing about let you finish and then you can respond to that. So why
Yeah,
don't we
but
do
you
the same? I know.
strawmanned me, and you stopped me when you were being strawmanned.
You opened by saying that Pierce. You got interrupted when you said Pierce was running cover for Hamas by pointing out that Israel's going too far. Quiet. Let me. No, you didn't. Your point stopped. Listen.
All right, don't talk over each other. Elica, let Dave respond, and then you respond to him.
I listened to the garbage you had to say.
Let him respond, then you reply.
Let me get in now.
But I didn't say
I
no
know.
response.
All right, but stop talking.
Lady, let me just save you all the time in this debate. You wanted to debate me because I'm so wrong about everything and I'm so influential, and you wanted to smack it down. It ain't gonna be you, lady. You're not the one who's gonna stop me. This is just ridiculous.
It's lady.
Okay, I'll call you whatever. Oh, okay, good one. Oh yeah, you really smacked down my bad ideas. Anyway, Pierce, again, all they have.
You're too stupid to realize it. You're too stupid to realize how bad your ideas are.
There you go. That's the argument you got. Anyway, can I talk now?
Sure.
Okay. So Pierce, as always, it's just the same thing on repeat here, right? So the defense is to go, but look, the motivation of Israel is pure. The motivation of everybody else is evil. Even though obviously what Israel is doing is objectively torturing women and children to death as they die with their bones crushed under rubble. But also, Pierce, don't let it mess with you that at the highest levels of the Israeli government, they've kind of told you what their motivations are here. I mean, the South African case that they brought to the International Court of Justice was like 90% just direct quotes from Israeli leaders. The prime minister himself referred to them as Amalek when talking to the military. You got the finance minister, the defense minister bragging about how nobody's getting any food for a 3-month period, bragging that not 1 ounce of grain will get into Gaza. I mean, I'm sorry, this is obviously terrorism. It borders on genocide. It's horrifically wrong. And for you to use your example of saying like, oh, this is what I'm saying is that a guy who robs a store and a cop who comes to stop them are committing the same act because they're pointing a gun at each other. Yeah, but of course, in that example, they're right. But in that, no, that's what you said. That's what you said about my point. And it was really dumb. Because in that example, there aren't innocent people being slaughtered. Yeah, it kind of is.
If there were, it would still be different. Okay, so
Elica, let me ask you a question, which is this. Are you comfortable with everything that Israel's done in the last 3 months?
No, I've always said that there should be dual criticism, and that's exactly what my problem has been this whole time. Everybody's criticizing Israel, which is fair, but why isn't anybody criticizing the reason why Gaza looks like this? Because Hamas has decided to embed itself.
They are, though. I mean, I couldn't have been more critical of Hamas going back 20 months. I mean, I still am now. I think they're a despicable terror group. Well, they're a despicable terror group who committed one of the worst terror attacks of modern times. I mean,
your earpiece maybe wasn't working for the whole first 5 minutes of this, where me and Pierce both agreed that the previous guest was ridiculous to downplay Hamas's crimes and that they had committed horrific acts of terrorism.
Elica.
What I was responding to in terms of what Piers said to me, he was talking about why is it that we can do targeted military strikes in Iran, but we've decided to entirely desecrate Gaza. And my response was that, not saying that it was right, but I'm saying that when Hamas embeds itself in all of Gaza, it is going to result in ruin. And it reinforces the point that I've been making this entire time, not just since October 7th, but for the past 3 years that I've been talking about terrorist regimes, which is that they bring mass death and destruction everywhere they go.
Well, that is true. I agree with that. But I also know that Israel, through Mossad, have supposedly the most sophisticated, experienced intelligence operation in the world. And it was brilliantly seen with the Hezbollah pager attack. It's been brilliantly identified by the way they managed to identify where all the military leaders and nuclear scientists and nuclear sites were going to be in Iran for Israel to attack. From a purely military perspective and intelligence perspective, Israel did an extraordinary job, both with dealing with Hezbollah and the Iranian regime. However, it does just beg the obvious question. why were they not able to foresee in any way, apparently, that Hamas were going to spend 20 years spending the billions of dollars which Netanyahu had encouraged them to have, because he believed in divide and rule with the Palestinian Authority, that they had these billions of dollars and were spending it on creating one of the world's biggest underground tunnel systems to operate from. And then how did Mossad not know anything about 3,000 Hamas terrorists pouring over its border when they're literally on their border and they're guarding it all day long? So I just cannot understand how this could have happened. And then I don't understand why Israel is responding in a way which it's never responded to anything like this in this way before. Why is Gaza? And then you had the Smodrich quotes, Elica, where he brazenly talks now last week on camera that the plan now is to cleanse Gaza of Palestinians. That is ethnic cleansing. That is a war crime.
That's obviously wrong. That's obviously wrong.
So we need to agree. We need to agree certain things like that, because honestly, it's important to me. It's like when people don't condemn Hamas, I sort of tune out, because it's like, the last guy, the moment he just said he was proud of what Hamas did, I tune out of him as a credible guest. But if you're prepared to admit, which very, very few pro-Israelis right now will admit, which is that some of this strategy is completely wrong, I think we may get somewhere.
It's so foundational to acknowledge that fact. It is so foundational to say that just because you have the right to defend yourself, it doesn't mean that you have carte blanche. It is so foundational to acknowledge all of these things, to acknowledge the death, the destruction, all of it. This is not what my conversation is about.
Okay.
This is not about, has there been damage or destruction or whatever. The whole point of this conversation is that you're making moral equivalencies, and these moral equivalencies blur the distinction between right and wrong, good and evil. Now, you can say that, but some of these actions look like they are evil in themselves, but the entire conversation always goes down to intent. That is what our entire criminal justice system is.
But I don't agree with that. I honestly don't agree. You've just said that unless I'm wrong, you've just said that some of the things Israel's been doing are evil, right? You've drawn your own moral equivalency. You said both sides are doing... Well, hang on. Both sides are doing evil things. That's surely the point Dave Smith was making.
Dave Smith and Piers Morgan just tag-teamed a masterclass in common sense, while Elica tried to moral high-road her way out of an ethical pothole the size of Gaza's rubble. Dave didn't just call out the carnage. He named names, dropped quotes, and held receipts like a political hitman with a conscience. Meanwhile, Piers did what he rarely does, actually hold Israel to account on live TV without tripping over his own British exceptionalism. Elica kept crying intent, but here's the thing: if someone burns your house down and says, "I meant well," guess what? Your house is still in ashes, intent doesn't bring back the dead, and the whole Hamas hides behind civilian excuses. That's not strategy. That's a get-out-of-jail-free card for indiscriminate slaughter. Bottom line, if Mossad can assassinate Hezbollah targets with pagers or drone strikes against nuclear scientists, they can definitely avoid bombing children eating dinner. This isn't war. It's vengeance on autopilot. But hey, if you're tired of the media playing dumb, the excuses running on repeat, and war crimes being rebranded as self-defense, smash that like button, share this with someone who needs a reality check, and subscribe so we can keep cutting through the noise with truth, fire, and little unapologetical sarcasm.